in the rocket garden at Kennedy Space Center with massive rockets that took man to the moon.
Now, I'm an optimist, so let's look at this up. The moon's about 250,000 miles away, right? It's about 239,000. We only missed by about 35,000. So, of course, we'd send more probes out there. Eventually, we put people on the surface. So, you know what? Let's call it close enough for the first try. Sounds good, right? Close enough for the first one. All right. So now we're going to turn our attention to the white one with the 19 on it. So I want to give some of you that awesome shade right now. Now, some of you have talked about this rocket a little bit. It's called a Thor Able or a Thor Delta rocket. Now, if you look towards the top and it looks like something's missing, well, folks, that's because the top stage is missing from this rocket. The reason? Hurricane Matthew took it, and he's not very good at sharing, and he hasn't given it back yet. So hopefully we'll get that back soon, but until then, we'll use your imagination. Now, go on your smartphone and listen to what I got to say. There's a little, thin, about 10-foot tall stage that goes on top. It's just what would hold the satellite or the warhead during the ballistic missile days. That's about all you're missing. All right, guys? Now, this rocket here was used to send our first communication satellites into space. It's called Echo 1 and Telstar. So Echo 1, this big ball about the size of a house, it just bounces the signal off, it will come back down. Telstar was the real game changer, though. Telstar gave us an ability to have a live broadcast between North America and Europe for the very first time. Did you guys watch the Olympics last year? We watched live sports in real time, not just in a different country, but on a completely different continent. And that's all thanks to Telstar. So one last thing about Telstar, kind of a pop culture reference. Now, a lot of us have heard of the Beatles and the Monkees, correct? British invasion changed rock and roll forever. But before them, there was a band by the name of the Tornadoes. And they wrote an instrumental, and they named it Telstar. It was actually the very first time a British band had ever been #1 on the American charts, ever. All right. So you guys can stay right here. I'm going to kind of go over this way a little bit. We're going to talk about these two rockets next to the Heroes of Legend building.
Let's get a photograph though, because
so we're going to talk about these two rockets right here. Now, the black and white one with the red United States on the side. That is called a Mercury Redstone rocket. And that's the type of rocket that Alan Shepard used to become the very first American to go into space. Went up 115 miles into the sky, landed downrange 300 miles in the Bahamas. The entire first flight of an American in space took 15 minutes. That's it. Now think about what I just said. 15-minute flight, 300 miles into the Bahamas. Yep, you heard me right. That's a 15-minute trip to the Bahamas. That's the dream. That's what that is. But then just 20 days later, John F. Kennedy made his famous "We will go to the moon" speech. Of course, we will go to the moon, bring them back safely by the end of the decade. We had just gone to the Bahamas, 300 miles away. Now this president wants us to go 239,000 miles to the moon, put a person on the surface, and bring them back safely in under 9 years. Well, folks, eventually we would have that one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind, but we still have a lot to talk about and a lot to accomplish before we can get there. So we'll turn our attention to the next rocket, just to the left of it, that big silver one with the black United States on the side. That one there is called a Mercury Atlas rocket. And that's the type of rocket that John Glenn used to become the first American to orbit the Earth. Went up for